You're listening to the Everyday Determinator podcast, brought to you by Anne O'Caffer of the Determinator Collective.
Hello, Determinators. Today we're speaking with Deeter, who's a mindset coach. He's helping people to find their one epic thing through his program, the ultramarathon mindset. Hi, Eric. It's great to have you here. Welcome.
Hey, thank you a lot, Anne. I appreciate the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
Good. It's great to have you here all the way from Kansas City, Kansas, all the way speaking to me in Scotland, central Scotland. So Eric, you a couple of years ago, you were stuck. You knew you were stuck. You'd done some sort of personal developments along the way, but you were struggling to get out of that. And then I think you said in 2017, you found this key to unlock that stuckness and get yourself, off the treadmill of life. I think is probably appropriate for your
that's a good
marathon
yes.
mindset.
Treadmills are not my thing. I do not like
Mine too. I refer to it as the hamster wheel of life, but treadmill is exactly the same.
Yes. It's the same thing.
In my mind, I feel like treadmill's the same. So can you? What was that key? What was the catalyst for this big change in your life?
Well, I kind of give you just a small little bit of background. I had this belief that was with me all of my life, that I was not supposed to be a winner. I was not supposed to be successful. That I really tied into a lot of my upbringing, and it was a subconscious belief. I knew it was there, and so I started doing all these studies about the subconscious. And so I learned all these things about how the subconscious works and where the subconscious beliefs came from. And the fact that, 95% of what we do is subconscious. Most of our decisions, we think we're making rational decisions, but it's actually these subconscious things that we never are aware of that are affecting what we do and what we believe and subsequently the life that we get. And so, I knew where it was, knew where it came from, knew how I got there. And every time I tried to change, the subconscious is so powerful. Every time I tried to change, it was like it failed. It was just like I'd make progress for a little bit. And I think most of us have, can identify with that kind of,
Yep.
I want a different life. I want something new, but I can't figure out how to get there. And so I read a book called How to Break the Habit of Being Yourself, and by a guy named Joe Dispenza.
Okay.
And it perfectly described the interaction between the body and what I call the soul, the soul or the mind. It's the way that we think, the thoughts that we think, the emotions that we feel, and the drive, or they call it the willpower. Yeah. And those three things is what in Christian tradition they call the soul. Science, we call it the mind. I use those interchangeably because it's those kind of three parts. And what I discovered, and the way I was raised, is that most of my life I lived in my thoughts. It's kind of Western civilization tradition. I think, therefore I am. We identify who we are with what we think, and my thoughts were disconnected from my emotions, and my thoughts were disconnected from that willpower. So I would think one thing. I want to lose weight. And I did that. I wrote that goal for 15 years. I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight. And my will wasn't attached. Neither were my emotions. It was something I was like, I knew I needed to do it. I knew I wanted to do it, but it just didn't get done.
Just can't get yourself there.
So this book talked about the fact that the way our soul, our mind interacts with the body is kind of tied in all together. And so every thought that we think creates an emotion, which creates a physical response in the body. And so there's this neurochemical interaction between the thoughts that we think and our body, which creates the emotion. And it's like a feedback loop. And so if you try to think different thoughts, you're creating different neurochemicals, and your body is kind of used to the old neurochemicals. And so your body kind of conspires against your thoughts to keep you in the same place. That's where I was at. I was stuck. So this process of learning how to think differently and to get something different, it was when I realized it was like, okay, my body is into this as well. I need to connect my emotional part of me and my drive along with the things that I'm thinking. And he had a very simple meditation practice, and I'd failed miserably in the past trying to do meditation. Just never could seem to get it to work. But this was a meditation. Since it was my body conspiring against me, it was a feedback. So I was getting my thoughts in touch with what was going on in my body. And so as I was trying to using my thoughts to kind of manage those neurochemicals inside of my body. The other thing was I set the goal that I set was to weigh under 200 pounds by the end of 2017. So I had a year to do it. And it's, for all the times that it failed in the past, I started making progress. This thing started to click, and I went all the way through. And then by August of 2017, I was down to 195. And I knew I'd need some margin because we had, Christmas and we have, celebrate Thanksgiving in November. And, both of those, we eat a lot of food. And so I was like, I need some margin there. So I made the goal, but in the process, a friend of mine ran a trail race, 50-mile trail race in September. And I was making progress in these things. And I looked at that and I went, I could do that. I could do that next year. And so I set the goal to run that same 50 miles the following year in 2018. Yeah. And so I started running in 2017. And so that's kind of my story of how I got into ultramarathon running.
So that's quite a big difference from I'm sitting here and I know I need to lose weight, I know I need to do these things, to I can do 50 miles. Yes. That's a big shift. So when you get to that point of 50 miles, and you said you set that target, I believe, for the very next year. So you had 365 days from I can do that. And I believe you were successful in doing that.
Yes.
So tell me about that first year. What challenges did you have in that first year? Was it a case of, just reinforcing that I can do this, I can do this? Was there times where you felt, what have I done? I'm sure there was at least a few times where you think, what have I set myself up for? Share a little bit about that first year of taking on that challenge after obviously climbing that hill to get to that point of saying I can do this, and then actually doing it.
It was a process. The thing that there's several facets, I guess, to this, and so I'll start off with saying I told my wife, it was a friend of mine who'd done this. I said, Dan ran this race. He says, I'm going to start running trails. So that was the only thing I said. I told nobody that my goal was to run a 50-mile trail race the following year. That was something I kept totally to myself. And so there was just this goal, because I've learned that, a lot of times if I say things out loud, if I set a goal and I start telling everybody, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, there's something in our mind that will actually make you feel like you've accomplished it. And so you set yourself up for failure if you talk about a big goal like that too much. So it really was a secret goal for me. But I started training, and I was a runner back in my 20s, and I'd quit. And so I knew the process. I knew what I was going to go through to start. And so I knew those first few weeks, I was going to feel like I was going to die. I was going to just feel
adjustment process.
Yeah, it's a definite process. So I was ready for that. But once I got past that initial first couple of weeks, and, it was just like, I started out with a mile, and then, kept that. And then I worked my way up, and I felt great when I was able to actually run 3 miles. And so then I was kind of about that point where my body was starting to get used to it. And I started bringing that same meditation practice that I had, before, that gotten me to that point, into my running.
Yeah.
So as I ran, I would get feedback from my body. And so as I was very much, focused on kind of what was going on, how my body was moving. And it was like, it was not really let's say a spiritual experience, but it was more than just a physical activity. My brain, my mind and body were kind of in this together. And so rather than, making my mind, driving my body to do something that was unpleasant, and pushing my body to try to say, okay, there's this argument, like, your brain, your mind is there saying, we need to do this, and your body's saying, no, this is painful, this is not. Yeah. And so rather than, you can have your mind kind of be like a tyrant to drive your body to do things. And I think a lot of people do that. It's easy to break your body. I mean, runners suffer a lot of injuries because of that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
For me, it was a mind with body. And so there was this kind of give and take. So I was aware of asking my body to do things that were unpleasant, to do things to push past, what felt comfortable, but not to go too far. And so that synergy, that partnership between mind and body, kind of developed through that. So that was, I guess, another part of my process. My 50-mile race was, I said 365 days. I set a goal for a 50K, which is right at 31 miles. And so I ran that, and in the process of training, I got acquainted with other people who were doing this as well.
Yeah.
And so I landed in a group of trail runners, and we met, we would run every Thursday and then drink beer afterwards. And so I got great. And it was like, I started this process in September. So I ran through the winter. And so it would run in the dark. It would be cold. We would be hanging out after our runs, drinking beer in, it was 15, 20 degrees Fahrenheit somewhere, that's somewhere, below zero in Celsius, if I remember right. But, so that process, that camaraderie, and I heard stories of these people who were doing, 100 miles. And so there were several people who had run multiple 100-mile races. So I got into a community who viewed running those distances as a normal thing. It's certainly possible so that also helped reinforce my training, my mindset. And so those things were really what kind of propelled me. The 50K, I got to a point where I was right at 20 miles in, and I was going to quit because it was hot. I was tired. It was like, I don't have it in me to run another 10 miles. One of my running friends came running down the trail and says, you only have 8 minutes to start your next loop, or you'll be out of the race. And I said, I can't do it. And she says, oh, just come sit down. We'll talk about it. And they dumped ice water on me and fed me and stood up, and I left for that final loop with 2 minutes to spare. And I was able to finish. So that was a huge boost. But it was the encouragement of other people who really helped me get. So there was a lot of things that went into that, but I didn't just do it on my own.
No, I think for me, when thinking about resilience and taking on challenges, social connection and community is so important. And obviously you've demonstrated a great experience, an experience of that there. Was there any, maybe standout mentors or, mentorship of people who maybe worked a bit more closely with you in this and give, you said the lady came up, and so was there any sort of like a closer mentorship with a few individuals, or was it just the community as a whole that really sort of helped to elevate you to the next step?
Well, the lady who came down the trail to help me, she and her husband are very, very experienced runners. Both of them have run 100-mile races.
Yep.
They were the ones that kind of took me under their wing, and kind of, they gave me a lot of pointers. They gave me encouragement. And so in that time when I got to that 50-mile race, they were there helping another runner. So I had connection with them during the race. So yeah, they were really kind of a mentor. It wasn't an official them saying I'm going to mentor you, but we became friends.
Yeah. And I think that really helps, having someone who, you said these people were very experienced, they've done it loads of times, and having people who have done it see something in you and just sort of say, you can do this, we'll help you find your way, let's talk about it, and helping you maybe find where you're struggling with something, and then how you can get to the next step. I mean, these things certainly help, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Yes, they do. And they were the ones after I finished my 50-mile run, and a friend that these friends were helping another man who was working on doing 100-mile at the same time. Yeah. So I slept overnight and got up in the morning and then saw him finishing his attempt at 100 miles, and they were there helping. And I said to myself, I could do that. So I started at 50, and I looked at the 100-mile distance. And by then, I'd been around groups of people who, it was like 100 miles was, it's not like easy, but it's something that's doable. And so I set my sights on the next distance, and then told my friends who were kind of my mentors, I'm going to do the 100 next year. And they certainly, you can do that.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think it's very similar in a lot of ways to, someone on a career path thinking, I want to do this course, or I want to get my bachelor's degree, then I want to do my master's, or, it might be a training course, or I want to get to a certain position, I want to get to an assistant level, then maybe I want to get to an associate level. And it's that sort of process, isn't it, where you're taking it step by step. When you reach a level, you've got there, you've learned some things, and then you're ready to set your sights on the next big thing, and pursue that almost as you've done with your ultramarathon, distances.
Yes.
It's a very similar structure, although running scares the life out of me. I can't imagine doing it, but the same process feels very similar to, even thinking about, your career. So would you agree with that? And what would you say to someone who is maybe looking at taking on a challenge, whether that may be ultramarathon training or some other challenge? What would you say to them? It certainly seems to me that you sort of celebrate your small wins along the way, although, to me, 50K is not so much of a small win, but a fantastic achievement. But in terms of getting to the 100K, it's a stepping stone towards that. And I think acknowledging that and celebrating that is part of that process.
It is. And that's, there's a lot of things I had to learn along the way, but I was kind of taught not to be proud. Kind of the same mindset that held me back. You're not supposed to be a success. You're not supposed to be a winner. That mindset was, if you did do something, you needed to downplay the success. You need to just, don't make too big a deal of, so you don't appear to be proud. So what happens is that your mind, if you have a win, if you have a success, and you're kind of like, oh, it's no big deal. Your mind says, well, it's not a big deal. We're not going to do that again. So I had my mind fighting against me. I wanted to be successful, but I kept doing these things that were telling myself, no, it's not you. That's not for you. And so, learning how to say, wow, I ran 50K. I did that. I overcame that challenge, because it was a challenge. I was ready to quit, and I overcame it. And my friends who encouraged me to go on says your third loop on that 50K was better than your second. Yeah. And so I was able to push through that barrier and actually, have success and feel good about it. And that was a big key to it.
And I think reinforcement from people who have done the same as well. And, you know, that acknowledgement and recognition from the community as well, that, you know, that was really good. That was a great loop. That helps to reinforce that, like, I did that, you know, I overcome that. And that helps you to be able to have that conversation with yourself and your mind and say, actually, that was a good thing, you know, rather than no big deal, you know.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, you had talked about the fact that not everyone is a runner. Yeah. The reason I became a mindset coach is that the things that I learned in running, you know, apply to life. And so, you know, if I would have known those things about, you know, I would have been able to overcome my struggles had I been through some of those things that I learned in the ultramarathon, and that mindset of, you know, showing up, you know, putting in the miles, you know, doing the work, you know, the little things, and also gradual progress. You know, I started off with 1 mile, and I walked a lot, you know, and you know, but you know, it's the same thing with any what I encourage people: find your epic thing. You know, you don't do something epic right off the bat, but you break, you know, you start with a small step, and keep in mind, you know, there's this epic thing that I want to do, and I'm headed that way, and here's the steps that I'm going to do, and I'm going and putting in the work. The mindset to do and celebrate and work on those small things with the big goal in mind is the thing that I learned how to develop, and that's what I teach for any goal.
Yeah, so I think it's the direction of travel rather than your pace. That seems more important. You know, if you're navigating towards that epic thing, and you're making small progress, then that should be celebrated, and you know, it should be acknowledged along the way that you're doing well, even if it's maybe not at the rate of progress you want to do. You know, I know certainly sometimes I set my sights on something and maybe set a bigger chunk than what I'm actually able to achieve, but I'm still going in the right direction. And I think it's okay to readjust. Like you say, you walked a lot, and maybe some days you didn't set out to walk that day, but you know, sometimes our body tells us we need to just slow down a little, walk a little, but that's still okay. You're traveling in the right direction. So in terms of that, what if you had any major, I don't like to use the word failure, but a lesson maybe, a lesson's kinder, isn't it? You know, that you've had along the way that's had maybe more of an impact on you, or how you overcame that along the way.
Well, the interesting thing you talk, we as coaches are, you know, kind of trained not to use the word failure. But I have come to really embrace that, and that my first attempt at 100 miles, I failed, and it was, that is part of the appeal of running long distances, and that's the reason I went from 50 miles to me. When I finished 50 miles, I realized it did not challenge me in the way that I wanted. It was, I celebrated it. It was great. I mean, it was my goal, but I looked at it and I saw my friend who had run 100 miles and where he was at. And I saw him at about 90 at mile 9. No, it was about 85. And I looked at him and I went, whatever he's experiencing right now, I didn't have to push that hard.
Okay.
And so that's why I decided to do 100. And 100-mile distance is a whole nother thing, and requires a lot. It requires you to dig deep.
Yeah.
And it's not a guaranteed finish. It's not I mean, there are so many things that can go wrong. You can prepare everything. And for me, I was strong enough. I was moving. I was on pace. I was going according to plan. In the middle of the night, we had a torrential rain, and you know, these are dirt trails.
Yeah.
So I ran through the rain. I was fine. But about 3 hours later, the dirt had turned to this mud that was just like grease. And so I couldn't move fast enough. And I got to 84 miles and they said, well, the time limit is, 10 minutes past. You had to be at this point, before you could, so they wouldn't let me to continue. So yes, my first attempt at 100 miles, I failed. It was, there were circumstances that caused that, but I didn't do the distance. I felt good about it. I felt good about what I had done, but I didn't meet my goal.
I think that's okay as well. It's okay to set out to do something, not quite get there, and still feel good about where you have got to. You learn, maybe you learned that, in the rain, I maybe need to do this, or, adjust it. And so, I'm sure it was still an experience where you learned something. And then obviously, ultimately, you did go on and do 100 the next time.
Yeah, actually, my running friends told me I'd recovered about 2 weeks, and they came to me and said, you're already ready. There's this other 100-mile race in about 6 weeks. You're ready. Let's go down and we can do that. And so I was able to go and finish 100 miles about 6 weeks later. So, and I had same kind of challenges. I had, there were things, my foot had a pain at about 58 miles and I couldn't really run. So I had to walk fast, but I finished the distance.
Well done. Amazing. That's just, I can't even think about running. And I think that goes to the talking about mind with body. My mind is definitely not on that. My body's not there either, but my mind is definitely different.
Well, anybody can do those distances. I mean, I've seen people who make that decision, and that's really what it is deciding that, whatever you want. I mean, for me, it was, I wanted to do that. I wanted to find out if I had what it took to do that, to take on that challenge.
Yeah.
And I think whether it's running, whether it's anything else, I think inside all of us, there's the desire to have a significant big challenge and to do something that we can, that's not easy. And we can say, I worked through it. I did this thing. And, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be big to anybody else. It's if it's significant and big to you, then that's what I call your epic thing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that mindset of deciding this is what I want to do, and then making the decision to start, making the decision. And that's really where the mindset comes in.
It is, isn't it? I think that's for a lot of people the hardest thing, is that start, taking the first step on something can be the hardest one, and probably the biggest one sometimes, because it can be quite a huge thing to undertake. What advice would you give someone, or your younger self even, about what you're doing now, what you know now, having done this? What would you say to your younger self that you wish you'd known? I know you mentioned earlier on about, you feel like you would have come past your challenges easier, or maybe not easier, maybe you would have found a different way to approach some of your challenges when you were younger, if you knew what you knew now.
I would say to make a decision to manage my thoughts and my emotions. That's what I learned to do in this. And I think it took me a long time to get there. But to tell my younger self of, learn to manage your thoughts and connect them to your emotions. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I think it's a really useful thing to learn to do. It's not an easy thing, but it is, something I've learned along my way as well. If you can learn how to take power from the thoughts that you have, rather than sort of just letting them pass by, or letting them consume you sometimes, which we also do, and then
Yes.
they don't actually serve us. So it's allowing your thoughts to then have a purpose and serve you in what you're trying to achieve, I think.
Yeah.
So a little bit off the track now. Do you have any other hobbies or any other interests when you're not on the running trail, that you maybe balance out? But it's obviously running a lot of the time is probably quite hard on the body, but also mentally, I'd imagine, if you're kind of in that zone and training quite a lot. What do you do to balance that?
What do I do to balance? I have my work, but my wife and I have remodeled homes for the last 30 years. So we work together. My wife and I are both self-employed.
Okay.
And so I am looking to close down the construction part of our business and starting to work as a mindset coach. So this is kind of a transition for me, the coaching. But I enjoy reading. There's always work to do in that. We bought a home that we've rehabbed rehabbed it extensively, and this is the third one we've done. And so my wife loves to come up with projects of, what we can do to the home. And I mean, and her projects are never, I mean, it's not just like put a little paint on the walls, and it's maybe we need a window here, or maybe this wall needs to be over there. and now we've gotten the inside done a lot, and she's still making plans about what to do to finish the inside, but she's working on the outside. So poured a patio 2 years ago, deck this year. So there's always something to be done. Always something, something. so that's not necessarily a hobby, but yeah, it is something I enjoy. I enjoy working with my hands. I enjoy seeing those things come to life with
there's something great about a transformational project, isn't there?
Yes.
That's great. So if you were in my shoes, is there a question that you would have asked that I haven't yet?
What's next?
What is next?
What is next? I still have the race that I did not finish. I tried again this year, and out of 45 of us who started, only 11 finished. This was a very brutally hot year. So yeah, I'm going to go back and
give it another shot.
Give that 100-mile race another shot. Yeah, I'm kind of looking at how long I can run. I'm started running when I was 60, 64 now, and so I'm looking at what do I need to do physically and mentally to be able to run these distances until I'm in my 80s, because there are people in their 80s who are doing this.
Yeah, I've seen some, and we actually had a lady in when I used to do kettlebells. There was a lady in there. She was well into her 70s, and lifting it is sort of breaking world records and things like that. So it's fabulous to see, and it gives me hope that I'm not too late to start something.
It's never too late to start.
Probably not running, but you never know. It might be.
And I think find what really lights your fire. Find what really makes your passion come alive. And I think physical activity is so important. The mind and the body connection has to have some kind of movement, I think. And so, but find that thing that really kind of feeds your soul, and go after that.
I don't think it's ever too late to start something new. So no, that's fabulous. What's a song that either when you're running or not, maybe you have a song that when you're in that moment, and that real sort of like you said, when your friend was in that 85th mile, and you really have to dig deep, is there a song on your playlist that really helps you just shake up that mindset and makes you dig a little deeper? Or is there a song, or if you had a theme tune song, what would that be?
The first one that comes to mind. So that's Don't Stop. Don't Stop Believing. I can't remember the name. Can't remember who.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Journey.
Journey. Yeah.
Journey. Yes. Don't stop believing.
Yeah.
And that's that's not on my plate. I don't listen to music when I run. Okay. And usually the song that's in my head is whatever the latest song I've heard. So when you ask me that, but yeah, that's kind of what I in ultramarathon running, the phrase we use is relentless forward progress. Yeah. And so it's not about how fast you go, because running, because going 100 miles, it's not so much about speed. It's about persistence. It's about that continuous progress. And even the elite runners have to practice that. There are times when the elite runners, there's things that happen, and they have to still dig deep and say, I just need to keep moving forward. And so that's kind of, for life as well, the idea of relentless forward progress that I have, that I know so many people and people, even friends of mine, they get to a point and they settle. And I've done it. I've hit a point and settled in and gotten comfortable. And I've always, that's the thing that I think is not, that's the thing that I don't want to have happen in my life. I don't want to settle in at a place and say, this is as good as it's going to get. And so I have really adopted that. Don't stop. Keep moving forward. And so
I love that relentless forward progress, because it's so much about certainly what, the term determinator is very much focused about, is that just put one foot in front of the other and just keep moving, even if it's a little bit slower, even if it's a little bit harder, just, that relentless, I just love that. So thank you. Can we just sum up, what would be your top 3 tips for someone who is either facing a challenge or looking to get started on a challenge, or, in some way related to this mindset approach? What would be your top 3 tips or pieces of advice for someone about to set out, or, struggling with something at the moment?
The thing, and I've developed this. I heard this from someone else and I've adopted it as my own, and I added some things to it. I'm going to add one more to it. You have to know what you want. And for a long time, I wanted something different, but I hadn't really identified what I want. And so, decide, this is what I want. Decide that you're going to take steps to do it. So that's kind of 2 parts to the number 1. Make a decision, decide. Number 2, start. And kind of what you said, take a small step without, doesn't necessarily, you don't have to have the whole thing thought out. Start moving, because if you take time to think about it, your mind will talk you out of it, because there's a part of us that wants that comfort, wants to stay, wants to settle. And so getting the process moving is important. I mean, that first thing. So start with smallest step you can take. Just get started, and you can figure out the whole process. And then the third one is don't stop. And so once you get started, don't stop, keep going. And there'll be setbacks. There'll be times when there's things will feel hard. And the thing is, even when so you kind of make progress initially, you get to this middle part, then it gets really, really kind of hard. And you have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Even slow progress, just don't stop.
No, that's really a great set of lessons for people to adopt. Where can our listeners find you on the web or on socials if they would like to learn more about the ultramarathon mindset? My name is Eric Deeter, EricDeeter. I own my domain under my name, which is good. So ericdeeter.com, everything is there. You can find me on Instagram as Eric Deeter. So I have a podcast as well called the Ultramarathon Mindset. But everything you can find as under Eric Deeter. Instagram is kind of my biggest social platform. I'm on Facebook as well, but usually I'm interacting on Instagram. Perfect. Well, we'll post the links along with this as we post it out for our listeners anyway, and they can follow up. Thank you so much for sharing your experience on going from 0 to ultramarathon in a short amount of time. Thank you so much for that. We'd really appreciate your experience in talking to you. Thank you, Eric. You're remarkable. So whether you're bouncing back from a challenge or storming forward to the next one, the Determinator Collective is here for you. Stay remarkable, folks.